You're tuned into the Writing Community Chat Show, the live streaming YouTube podcast that brings you the stories of authors, screenwriters, and more. Indie or established, this show's for the community. We invite you to be a part of it. Head to thewritingcommunitychatshow.com for more info. The WCCS. Together as one, we get it done.
Hello and welcome. You are watching the Writing Community Chat Show. Hi everybody, welcome, and Chris, I'm so happy to be here this week. It's been a long week and we love this show getting to the end of it because we can celebrate the weekend's arrival with a guest, but I'm happy to be here and happy to have a drink in my hand. How are you doing, Chris?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. You? I don't know why I said you because you just told me.
I just said that, yeah.
I don't have a drink in my hand. I'm still on the lemon and ginger tea, which is a bit of a shame, but hopefully next week I'll have a drink in hand as well.
Indeed, yes. It's been a bit of a cold one for us here. It's been like icy and snowy, and that's kind of weird because the weather's been so up and down lately, but not enjoying that too much. But it means a lot of people spent more time indoors. Chris, have you been writing?
Yeah, I've been doing a little bit of writing. It's funny you should mention snow because we had snow as well. And my eldest son, he had a question for me. He said, can we go outside? And he didn't want to build a snowman. He said, can we build the clown with the tearaway face from Nightmare Before Christmas? And I was like, well, I don't know how I'm going to achieve that, but we'll give it a go. Look, nothing like it, but still.
Brilliant. I love that he's, forget a snowman. Let's go for the horror element. Yeah, definitely up my street there. Yeah. So yeah, let us know in the chat if your writing mojo is around at the moment, because I know a lot of people over Christmas have a break and it's quite hard to get back into the rhythm of many things after Christmas, let's be honest. But hopefully you're back in action. And we've got a great guest for you tonight who's done many things, and we're going to take a lot of advice and tips from that person if we can. You'll know who that is if you've read any of the titles. So there you go. So Chris, yeah, I'm looking forward to tonight's show. We made an announcement on Twitter. We were just discussing this before we came on live, that we are going back to the Harrogate's Crime Writers Festival this year.
We are, and we're going back in a way that we're trying to be significantly more professional this time around. We've contacted Harrogate in advance. We're going to try and get on the press side of things. So we're actually there with our, not giving away beers like we were last time because we get in trouble for that. But I did ask if we could have some Theakston beers that we could give away because that went down a big hit last time. We got a lot of interviews as a result of the beer that we were giving away. So hopefully...
Yeah, unfortunately, it wasn't Theakston beer, which is where we're trying to rectify that this year.
Yeah, and I said to them, the Writing Community Chat Show, we're in a position where we've interviewed a lot of these crime writers. We'd love to work with you in partnership, Harrogate Crime Writing Festival. So if you're watching now live and you think that we would be a good fit for the Harrogate Crime Writing Festival this year, maybe just tag them and just say, yeah, the boys would be great.
Brendan says, do we get another shower video, Chris?
We do indeed. I'm on the weight loss journey already. So hopefully... I'll be very grizzly beard by then. Obviously, with the 52 weeks of beard growth.
Well, that's it. We're on this weekend. We'll drop Beards and Books, episode 3.
We will, and I'm reading The Paris Apartment, and we have a guest on with us as well, because Vicky Newman is going to come and review that book with me. So,
wow, you didn't tell me that, Chris.
Yeah, spicing things up with having a bit of a debate about the books that we're reading, so that should be fun.
I love that. That sounds fantastic. Right, let's get tonight's guest on because we'll waffle otherwise. Excited for this, Chris, let's be honest. So our guest tonight is an author, a broadcaster and ghostwriter. She has worked with major brands like Nike and Holland & Barrett, and she has worked in journalism for almost 20 years. Our guest worked on the BBC Radio 2 art show with Claudia Wilkerman for a decade. Plus, she has interviewed many authors of several publishing houses, including Bloomsbury, Hachette, and Penguin Random House, as well as presenting at the National Book Awards. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, Chris. It really is. It's incredible. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Alexandra Heminsley. Hello.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
We are delighted that you joined us on the show. Thank you. And how are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm really well, thank you. I'm also quite cold. I heard you talking about that. I went for a long walk. I timed it with sunset. I went for a walk along the beach because I live in Brighton, and so I'm feeling quite zen about the cold and the clear skies. Like I'd rather have that, but also undeniably chilly.
I've just put a puzzle piece together because you live in Brighton, and obviously I stalk social accounts of our guests, probably before or after they come on anyway, and noticed Vice and Beer were following you, and we were just talking about our naughtiness in Harrogate, and this beer was actually made and produced by Bison Beer, who are in Brighton.
Oh yeah, they're great.
Who sent this up to us, and you can see their logo on the back there.
Yeah, I'm very jealous of Harrogate. I've always found that, like, because when I was working in journalism and a reviewer and stuff, it always seemed like the crime writing gang with the fun, they were the cool kids. They had the festivals always seemed to have the best gossip, and like Hay was good and literary, but like it never seemed like quite as much fun as Harrogate. So I feel like it's a lot of effort to write a whole crime novel just to get invited there. But I can't say I'm not tempted.
Oh well, we've been once, and that was just 2021, Chris. I think COVID was kicking around, so we didn't expect to have that much fun. And even though it was quite low key at the time, it was a lot of fun. So
it always sounds like a lot of fun, and when you ring someone like the Wednesday after Harrogate and hi, how are things? And they'll say, like, that with this sort of air of mystery, they'll say sort of, oh, I'm feeling a bit better after Harrogate now. And you're like, was there a murder or was it just beer? Like, I'm always like quite intrigued.
Well, there was drama,
really
Chris. Yeah, fantastic.
It's worth going just to see Will Dean in his coat. His famous coat.
I love his books.
Yeah. He's
what
brilliant.
is his coat?
He's got this amazing green coat. Yeah, you should see him. He looks like a film star. Like just.
Well, he looks like a character you'd find in a book with his wispy hair and his collars up, and you know what I mean, just standing on a cliff in
Scandinavia, doesn't he? So has he got all the kit? Is it like
he does, and he's got an enormous dog, like the size you wouldn't believe. And if you follow him on Instagram, you'll see the dog.
Oh my God, I don't follow him on Instagram.
Yeah, do it. We interviewed him on this show, and he was literally in a shed in the forest with snow around him, and the internet was horrendous. And it was like he walks outside, and it's like a horror movie. Honestly, it's unbelievable.
Oh my God, I'm going to go and find him on Instagram. That's so satisfying.
Yeah.
I remember once I can't even remember who it was, interviewing a writer, and they were just like, yeah, I get up and I shave and I pop on a suit and I hire an office and I go and sit there and write from 9 till 5 and I come home and make the kids tea, and all I could think was like, you could do any job if this is your life. Like, why you've made being a writer like the least interesting ever. So when you find people like Will Dean who are really like living your expectations, that's very satisfying.
Isn't it? But how weird is it that you would become a professional writer and decide to work in an office like 9 to 5?
I mean, I understand, like, I've been freelance. When did I go freelance? Probably coming up for 20 years ago. Yeah, like 2005 was when I started elasticated waist and toasts any hour kind of life. And you do have to make some rules for yourself. And it was quite interesting watching when the first lockdown happened, people who I'd thought were quite together functioning adults just buckle when they had the sort of stilts of office life removed from them. So I kind of understand it to a point, but this particular author, I remember thinking it was like, why have you chosen this life when you could just live that life and just, you know, have company?
Brilliant. Right, before we keep going, because this conversation will end up going forever.
I know, I really
it's fantastic.
In there.
No, love it. What we're going to do at the very start is we're going to find out these brilliant details that kind of builds a character for the people that don't know you so well.
Yes.
So, for example, where did writing come from in your life? What was the inspiration? If we rewind the tape all the way back, where was that first spark of joy for writing?
I think it was the other way around. It was books. I was definitely a nerdy, wordy person, and I read loads when I was a kid and a teenager, and when it was sort of that point towards the end of my education where I was having to sort of thinking about jobs and stuff, it seemed at that point so audacious to even be allowed to like meet authors or work in proximity to them that I feel like I didn't dare push my luck and try to actually also be one. So I worked in and around publishing to begin with, and it took me, I just loved the process, and I found it was so interesting learning about like things like jackets, even like I used to love it. Like it was the very late 90s when I first worked in publishing, and I even used to find it really exciting. You know, those sorts of books that I don't even know if they're still published, which are sort of set in like a mill town in the 1800s, and there are always hundreds of them in like libraries 20 years ago, and there'd be like a woman wearing a shawl and she'd escaped from like a bad marriage or something. And they were always called things like She Wouldn't Be Told. And they always had paintings on. And I just kind of always imagined that someone just sort of sat at a desk and drew it like book jacket size. And then you'd suddenly go to reception and there'd be these huge paintings that were the book kind of book jacket style, and science fiction books as well was the same. And so even that kind of side of it, I found totally thrilling. So I didn't actually start writing or dare to write my own stuff until about 7 or 8 years after that kind of, like I had a long run up to it.
So take us to that moment then. Obviously, you've been admiring publishing from, you know, within it for quite a while, as you just said, like, you know, nearly 8 years before you actually picked up a pen and did it yourself. What inspired you to do that? And what was your first, like, how did you navigate that first experience of, right, I'm going to write a novel, I'm going to write something in this genre, and I'm going to try it like this?
Well, I did loads of nonfiction first. My first 1, 2, 3, 4 books were all nonfiction. And I think it was like what I really love about writing is finding the absolute best way to say something. It's like, I suppose, if I was in clothes, I would not be perhaps wanting to kind of be in the sort of like spangly showbiz end of it. I'd want to be doing like precision tailoring. Like I really like trying to find the tone of voice and all that kind of thing. So it took me a long time to feel like I had anything worth saying, like that merited a book. Like I could do a really funny email if we'd had a big night out, and I want, you know, this was like even before social media. I would be like 2004 and I'd be the one briefed in to do the sort of so this is what happened, guys, kind of thing. And basically my first few books were like an extension of that tone of voice. I was like late 20s, early 30s. And my first book was called X in the City, and it was about breakups. And I mean, I won't even say walk, I had to crawl so Dolly Alderton could run. It was a bad version of Dolly's book about breakups and friends, and how it's friends that get you through and all that kind of thing. And it was like it's so embarrassing. It came out the week that my younger sister got married, which when I realized that's how the dates were lining up, sort of 2 or 3 months before, I thought, this is incredible. Like, it doesn't matter that I'm the single one, because I'm the interesting writer one, and I'll just be able to tell people enigmatically that my book's out. And then I didn't really think that through, because then you get a phone call from your publisher, and this is like really exciting news. If you're an author, they were like, it's going to be in all the airports. And I was like, cool, because my sister got married in Italy, and I realized that all the guests at her wedding were going to find out that this was not like
that's amazing,
an exciting Will Dean mystery kind of enigmatic type older sister. It was just going to be a catalogue of my romantic failures for everyone to read on the plane to my younger sister's wedding. So I learned a lot about boundaries and non-fiction versus fiction, and a lot of that kind of stuff with that book. And then I wrote Running Like a Girl after that, and they all came from a place of kind of, nobody's talking about this thing, and I want to persuade these people. So what how can I persuade them? And X in the City was like a warm up to this, but Running Like a Girl was when it really like was the mission for me. Was people think that you have to be this kind of a person to run, and that there's only this kind of a satisfaction to be had from it. And I'm sure that I can persuade them otherwise if I tell them about all these failures that I've had, and the times I fell over, and the times I felt terrible, and the times I came last in the marathon, and all that kind of thing. And I knew that if I could be like a really engaging older sister, and it was all about the tone of voice. I mean, there were already loads of running books. It was when Born to Run had already been a bestseller for about 18 months. But that market was there was two distinct kind of sections to the running book market. It was either running for weight loss or like manual, and it was all very like run your way to beach body pride or whatever, or they were very male narrative nonfiction. So it was like day 6 in the marathon and the desert, and my feet were stumps, but I kept going because I'd found 4 beans among the sand. And I was just like, buying a bra is also really scary when you want to run a marathon. And it was all about like finding the people that weren't being spoken to in that tone of voice. And so that was definitely where I sat comfortably in kind of persuasive, I would say, writing. And still I was quite intimidated by plot and things like that, which has taken me again quite a long run up to get to.
I find it really interesting how that is a great tip for someone who maybe wants to write in a market that's very saturated, that you can look for that real kind of avenue which isn't kind of explored within that very saturated market. And I think it's great advice.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it applies to all, it applies to fiction anyway, because you just invent a character with a unique tone of voice.
Yeah.
But with nonfiction, you see it time and time again. Like, you look at those cookery book Mob, that kind of website and Instagram and YouTube channel. They're just doing like a version of what Jamie Oliver's been doing for 20 years, but with a different tone of voice, aiming for a different generation. But it's the same thing, and it's the same as Nigella and the next Nigella. It's finding your voice. That's the thing, isn't it? It's like when you walk into a cafe and someone looks you in the eye and you feel like you're welcome there. It's trying to do that on the page rather than from behind a coffee machine.
Yeah. Do you feel like, do you feel like when you write in that kind of new angle of that niche that you are possibly more exposed or risking more because it's kind of separated from what the general rule is?
Yeah, although yes and no. Yes, because you're sort of doing something different and you're having to persuade publishing that because publishing can be quite weird and recalcitrant about this. So you can get 2 books that have come out. So for example, there's been a lot of those ones that are basically copies of Raina Wynn's books, The Salt Path, with like beautiful kind of illustrated English countryside covers, and it's about white people going for a walk. Kind of that was the disparaging term I've heard for that genre. And sometimes you get 2 or 3 of those come out within a year, and it is just coincidence or whatever, and publishing will go, that's it, it's done, we've had 3. And sometimes you'll get 2 or 3 of something come out in a year, and publishing will go, oh my god, it's a trend, we need one. Like probably 5-8 years ago, it was all those hygge books, all the sort of like scanty living, and then you get like the kind of someone from the Spectator or the New Statesman would do one that was looking at like the politics of it and living standards, and then someone from the Daily Mail would be like how to get blankets like them and candles like them, and then someone from the sort of women's magazines would just be like how to do your makeup like them and why is their skin so fresh. And it's all looking at the same thing from all these different angles. And so on the one hand, you're taking the risk of publishing and to a degree the public going, no, we're done. Or on the other hand, you could be the one that reinvigorates or dominates the genre. I think the real risk with that with nonfiction, especially anything where you're putting your own story out there, is when you start, you're so enthusiastic to be published and to be on the page, and it's like, well, I wrote it, so like I know it's true, and then you're stuck like on podcasts like this 10 years later going, yes, the story about the blisters is still out there and people still message me about it twice a week. And knowing those boundaries when you're unpublished is really difficult, because if you have put it in between proper covers and charged people money for it, you have given them license to have an opinion on your life, and they've curled up in bed with you effectively for night after night. And so you can't then go, oh, don't talk about that, that's weird. And you don't maybe know that when you start out writing. You're just like, oh, they want to hear about me.
Yeah, so with that, obviously writing from such a personal experience, and obviously it's quite a shared experience that people are going to be reading about and be attracted to that book. Have you got any stories of people that have read it and then come to you afterwards and been like, oh my God, you never guess what? And those type of like really strange encounters with readers.
Oh my God, so many. I mean, a big part of the motivation for a lot of people to run, because Running Like a Girl is like my best-selling book, so that's got them, and it sort of reflects back to the reader, so it's encouraging the reader to take confidence in the fact that they can go and do and run and whatever. So there's always been, it's the 10th anniversary of that book this April, and there's always I feel like a kind of kinetic energy feedback loop that I've always had with the readers, where I did it, I said you can do it, they did it, and then they said back to me, I did it, thank you, you helped me do it. And what was really it sounds quite cheesy, but it was beautiful, and it really did keep me going, was that when I was having a really hard time in my own life, like 5 or 6 years ago, my son was very young and my marriage broke up and all that kind of it was bad scenes. And during that time, to receive every couple of days somebody saying, thank you so much, we've done this run for my sister-in-law and we were all sharing your book and it really helped us get through. People who'd read Leap In, which is my book about swimming, but also about infertility, and they'd be like, I just wanted to let you know, you were one of the books that was recommended to me and it really helped me through. And to hear that me trying my hardest at my laptop a couple of years previously, when it is a bit of a grind, when you're 2/3 of the way through a book or whatever, or you're not, it's not coming out right or whatever, that it not only did it get out there, but it reached the right people who needed it, and that they then fed that back to me, has been absolutely incredible and sustaining. And I remember it was the day that I was leaving. I was assaulted and there was a court case, and it was the morning that I left the court case, and someone had put on their Instagram a photo of a Post-it, and it was a library in Ohio. I've never been to Ohio, let alone leafed through copies of my own book in libraries there. And someone had written out quotes from my book, the inspiring parts, and put them on Post-its on the pages for other people to take away. And then this woman had taken a photo of it and said, oh, look at this really cool thing. And it was literally a quote going, you're going to be fine, you can do it. And I literally was looking at my phone on the way to a court case to give evidence against this person. And it was incredible. It was oh my God, there was never been any greater professional example to me of if you go out there with an open heart, it can come back to you. It was amazing.
Wow. That's insane. But in the best way. Obviously, your truth has touched other people's truths, and then that's been almost a gift that's
definitely galvanized me to write at other times, because I still I've not managed to stem the ongoing tide of days when writing just feels really difficult and lonely. So it's nice to have like that.
With this being obviously really successful, would you think about, obviously you've got How to Run Like a Girl, would you be tempted to do maybe How to Run Like a Woman? I
know. Well, I think the market has, I feel like I feel like I was the only person saying something like this at that point, like 10 years ago. But since there's been Bella Mackey's book, I can't remember what her one's called. It's got a really cool title. And Bryony Gordon's done one. And then there's been ones about, doing weights and the history of women in sport. And that whole kind of story, I feel like, has been taken on by different generations now. So I don't know. And like when I wrote, there was like, no, this girl can and stuff like that. Like it's, there was no lionesses winning in football. And I was plugging away, like trying to write for websites about the World Cup like 8 years ago or whatever, and just getting horrible tweets in the middle of the night saying, yeah, no one cares. The women's football's crap. And I kind of feel like I'm happy to stand on the side of the stage and champion other people at this point. And I post about fitness and stuff like that. But like, I feel like the big revelations made it into Leap In and Running Like a Girl. And I feel like if I was to write more now, it would be like, went up and down the seafront in a grump again. Felt better when I came back. I knew I'd forgotten it would work, even though I wrote the book.
I think I literally have just transitioned in my life into the hiking club. I've gone from the running to the hiking, and that's the transition now. A coastal path walk is what I fancy.
Yeah. Well, I think also for me, running was it was a catalyst for a journey of growing up for me, massively, of self-belief and self-discovery. And I did that journey, obviously, to some degree. We're all going to carry on learning forever. But I think now a lot of the things that I like about running aren't the actual running. It's the get outside for 45 minutes and see the view, see the horizon, look at life from a different perspective, all of that stuff. And I think, when I started running, there was not even iPhones, let alone watches and, all that kind of stuff. And so I think I'm quite mindful of the like hyper quantification that you can get into of like shaving microseconds off things. And, I was like, I probably could get 8 minutes off my marathon time, but the cumulative hours that would take, maybe I would prefer to read or hike or swim or whatever.
Amazing. That is so true. We take those things for granted when we're young. We just go out and do it. But I think what it kind of feels like for me and probably a lot of people, that it's the same kind of escapism you get from writing or reading a book.
Yeah.
It's just distracting from or disconnecting from the general world. We are pushing on for time. So what I want to say is we've gone from the non-fiction world now.
Yeah.
And you've just decided to step into the world of fiction. How did you approach that, and how did you find the writing process? Was it a lot different to writing non-fiction?
Yeah, well, I mean, full disclosure, my name is not on these books, but I did, it was around the time that I was writing Running Like a Girl, I also wrote the 2 Strictly Come Dancing tie-in novels, Strictly Shimmer and Strictly Glitter, which were learning experiences, to say the very least. That is, as I'm sure you know, like a heavily looked after brand of the BBC. So I think what they kept in brand integrity, they lost in exciting storytelling, because BBC Worldwide didn't want anybody involved to have any negative characteristics, which doesn't make for very tense storytelling. So they were a challenging time. But so in fairness, Under the Same Stars weirdly was my 3rd novel. And it was an editor who I'd worked for when he used to work for a publishing magazine. I think he was the editor of Waterstones Books Quarterly. So I'd written journalism for him in the past, and he approached me and asked me about writing a book. He wanted something from me that would capture the same sort of what we were just talking about, actually, that the being outside, the feeling of when your body reminds you that you've always got a little bit left, and when you experience that physically, it can make that shift emotionally. And there's that in a quite a literal way in Running Like a Girl and Leap In. And he asked me to write something that might manifest that in a sort of and I was like, so you want like a boys' own book for girls? And he was like, yes. And I was like, I'm in. So yeah, I was like, okay, so there can be like mountains and you could maybe be close to falling off a cliff, but like also missing your boyfriend. And so it was like, yeah, I wanted to do like Jack London Call of the Wild, but for a millennial young woman.
That's fascinating. So I'm just going to rewind it a little bit because I'm still fascinated by the Strictly element. I didn't know these books existed, but I'm now fascinated. So what do they do? How do they approach you with that? Do they say, here's a rough outline of what we want you to write, no negativity, but you can include this, and this?
Well, it was a really interesting, because it was two. It was a really interesting, it was like a kind of creative writing class exercise, except with way higher stakes. Because the first one, it was when Strictly was relatively new. So I think it was like 2011 when I wrote the first one. So it was Strictly had been around, but it was like when it had become massive. And that it was, you could get Strictly makeup in Boots, and you could get, they'd done like masses of licensing in the way that they would do with like Doctor Who toys and things like that. So the way,
just imagine them all around a table going, what else can we do with Strictly? We can do mugs, we can do makeup, we can do books.
It's even weirder than you think, because the meeting was at BBC Worldwide, except the Strictly room was booked. So we were in the Top Gear room. We were all sitting in chairs talking about Strictly, but I was in a chair that was like a Ferrari with like a bit coming over the top.
Oh, wow.
So it was like completely like W1A.
Oh, we've talked before, Chris. You remember back?
But like,
we had mentioned, imagine writing a show a bit like The Office, but for writers in a writer's room. That's a scene straight out of that, surely.
Yeah. I mean, I'm fascinated by the Strictly book because it's like, did they ask you to write about the dancers that were in the show in a fictional form? Or were they fictional characters taking part in Strictly?
I would say there was some, because I came on board quite late, and I think there was some conflict between what the publishers wanted, which was like, they wanted, at the time, there was those shows which had come from those Imogen Edward Jones books called Hotel Babylon. And it was like all the secrets of hotels, and then it was the secrets of holiday reps. And there's a whole series of them. And then they became TV shows as well. So it was the sort of everything you slightly think these people are doing, and I'm going to make it into a novel. And I think what the publishers probably wanted was something like that, with like divas cutting the heel, like filing away the heels of people's dance shoes so they tripped, and all that kind of thing, and like really kind of whatever it takes to get to the top, kind of campy stuff. And I think the brand that the BBC were building with Strictly, which I do. I mean, I've worked with Claudia for 10 years, and and also Judy. I mean, I've inadvertently become like the Strictly biographer, because I've done Sara Davies' book, Judy Murray's book, and one other who I'm not allowed to say is person's book. And so I've and worked with Claudia. So I sort of do sincerely believe that the world of Strictly is a good, wholesome world. But that was definitely what they were trying to build as well at that time. When it was all a bit more kind of like glam before it had become like this golden goodness place. And so what happened was I did the draft that I was asked by the publisher, and BBC Worldwide just basically, it was like when you see reports that are redacted from the government, and it's just like, this doesn't make any sense. What even is this? So it was a bit like that, and it was really soul destroying. So it ended up like this runner who would like, there was like some line in it that she definitely didn't have a proper contract, who was supposed to sort of be the heroine, but because no one working in the world of Strictly was allowed to have negative personality traits, she ended up being this like she was crap at her job, she was neurotic, she was self-sabotaging, she was the heroine of the story, but was ultimately like in a very profound way dislikable and uncomfortable to read along with, because she was just like messing everything up wherever she went. And so with book 2, I could tell, like, the book 1, it just didn't work. You couldn't tell a story with those restrictions in it, and it was and it had to coincide with when it was on screen. So it was like there wasn't enough time to unravel the problem. So with book 2, I sort of said, can I pitch what I think would work? And so I set it in the fandom in the way that when you see for the first time at the end, towards the end of summer, you see a sort of browning leaf and you feel like, oh God, no, not already. And then you think, Strictly will be around soon. At least we've got that. And it was sort of set between the end of August and Christmas, with that way that it's sort of consolation for the seasons changing, and it sort of those shows help you get from the sort of summer holidays and all that time off and that awful back to school feeling before Christmas. And so it was the weeks of the show, and it was someone who was trying to get tickets, and so the main story was just a woman and a romance, but it was Strictly were like the poles which the whole thing was hanging on. The sort of fabric of the story was on the poles of the weeks of Strictly, and then somebody like gets her a ticket and she gets to go and see it live, and she nearly misses her train and all that. So it was like the show was allowed to be like the golden orb in the sky that was lending its light to this woman's life, without it being about the specific dancers and all that kind of thing.
Wow, love that. That's great. Yeah, definitely. I'm glad they let you do what you wanted to do with the second one, because it sounds so much better than the first.
Yeah, and also I think I really like writing about that sort of slight kind of melancholy. I'm not ready for this season, but I know it's going to happen kind of feeling, like back to school and then Monday mornings and sort of, the sort of like dry January. It's sort of kind of awful, but also you do know that it's only going to be 30 odd days, and then you'll feel so much better for it and all that. I quite like sitting. There's a lot of fun writing to be had with that kind of. Well,
here's a question for you then. If you were ever asked to go on Strictly, would you do it?
Oh my God. Basically, I'm only trying to be a good enough writer to get asked on Strictly. The only writer I know who's definitely been asked is Marion Keyes. And I think she's been pretty open about that, but I would kill to go on it. There you go. Like the two women, Judy Murray and Sara Davies, both had genuinely transformational experiences on it. And I was doing Sara's, but Sara from Dragon's Den, who was on last year, it was her, and it was meant to be this kind of business book, one of the dragons. And then 3 weeks in, I'd be like dialing into the Zoom and she'd be there with like 900 curlers in, and it would be like 8 a.m. and I was like, I thought the show wasn't pre-recorded, and she was like, well, it isn't, but this is how long it takes.
Wow.
So yeah, any kind of experience that begins with somebody feeling one way about themselves and ends with them feeling completely different is just like juicy writer material anyway. So
it is incredible.
Did you feel like the shackles were off then when you wrote Under the Same Stars? Because obviously you've been given like a strict sort of structure to go off, and then obviously this is your world. You can do whatever you want with it.
And it's kind of terrifying. Like I found, it's like with my nonfiction, you were able to think, at least I definitely know that this happened, and I know what I'm trying to persuade my readers. And so all I'm doing is like solving a technical problem of how to persuade them as effectively as possible. And when I've done ghostwriting and helped people with memoirs or done co-writing, there are objectives that those people want achieved. Like they want a book that's going to come out a certain time of year for a certain kind of person or whatever. And then with fiction, it's like, especially like when you've reviewed, so I know physically what it looks like. I did the books page for Elle magazine for 8 years, and I can remember like having to like kick my front door open if I went away for 2 days. So I knew like you have to earn your spot in that awful heap of reviewers' posts that takes them time and takes up space in their house and all that kind of thing. So there's that terrifying, my story has to earn its space there. But there's also like, you can like, everyone could just have green hair because you decided it, or you could fall off the edge of the cliff in Norway and it could turn out you could fly. And like the possibilities are so limitless when you're away from the boundaries of either it had to have happened, so i.e. nonfiction, or a brand has given you to some degree a brief. So I found it so overwhelming in that respect. And I it was really like to the point where you kind of there were days when I felt like a teenager, like, why do you even want to know why she got on a plane? Why do you care so much what airport do you want me to describe it? You're like, well, yeah, that's kind of the point. So yeah, it was overwhelming. And also it didn't help that I was writing it during lockdown, so the sort of going for a walk with a fellow writer and having a laugh about those sorts of teenage moods that would usually turn into something productive did tend to like rattle around my own head twice as much, at least twice as much.
So as we mentioned, Under the Same Stars, then we are pushing on. This conversation is fantastic. We're going to run out of time if we carry on without trying to stick to a bit of schedule. Under the Same Stars, before we do start delving into that story, can you let everyone know what it's all about, please?
Yeah, so it's about two sisters who basically don't know each other exist until their shared father dies. They're half sisters. So one sister, Maggie, is she lives in North Norway, up in the Lofoten Island. Well, a Lofoten Islands-ish archipelago. I sort of didn't want to make it exact. I wanted it to slightly live in imagination land. And
they all have green hat.
Sorry?
They all have green hat.
Yeah. And you can't fall off a cliff, you just fly. And Clara, the younger one, she is still close to her father. And when he dies, she has a letter from him saying, "You've got a sister. She stopped speaking to me. I wanted to talk to you about it. And I would love you to go and find her and please let her know how much I loved her." And he's left what little he had to both of them. And so Clara, who is she's not settled into London life. She's not like found that kind of world easy. And she also has a very controlling boyfriend. So she just leaps at the chance, with one might argue with significantly far too little preparation. Takes the journey that I did up to North Norway to find her sister, and to not just physically find her, because she's living on an island on one side of it. The only other thing on the island is a lighthouse, which is on the other side, which is like a 2.5 hour walk away. And not just physically find her, but also find out why she's chosen to put herself there and cut herself off from the world in this way.
Wow.
So yeah,
that sounds fascinating. And the fact that you said that, as you did, went up to Norway, was that part of the research, or was that something you did for the joy of that?
Well, it was sort of 50-50. I really wanted to do it. So when there was a slight sniff of doing a book, even slightly like this, I used it as an excuse and went as quick as I could. And I really, really, really fell in love with it. My son was really small. He was only 2 then. And it felt like it was inspiring for the book, and just, going somewhere physically and finding the detail, and even like weird things like, hanging around in a station, in the shop in a station, and seeing what brands of chewing gum like they've got, things like that, that are just so ordinary that you don't notice when you're rushing through Waterloo in rush hour and there's all those stuff. But when you're somewhere else far away, they're just also sort of like disorientating if you're feeling alone, and fascinating if you're looking for things to write about. But also the physical landscape it's like the Lake District on steroids, just like so just intense, like really. And that kind of thing where if you're feeling slightly tired, the blackness of the freezing cold sea with small little kind of waves on it, just mirroring the really black granite mountains all around that sort of Lake District. They're not lovely Welsh rolling grassy soft looking they're like hard and scary looking, but kind of impressive and imposing. And there was so much about that landscape that it sort of makes you have to dig deep in yourself to just to get anywhere. And to see, and you can tell that there's going to be a view over there, but also that it's 3 hours and like 5 energy bars away. So I loved that.
I've done
I loved
some
the
hiking
experience of it myself, and I really wanted to write about it again, like from a female perspective, because I think there's no shortage of books where men have to sort of post-war kind of daring do type books, and I wanted to kind of reframe that for young women.
I've done a bit of hiking in my time. I've never judged a distance by how many energy bars I need to get there. I think that's fantastic.
I literally went into Aldi and just like all those energy bars and just like
swipe
they were
those
down my socks. It was like a Taskmaster challenge.
Brilliant. Fantastic. So what's your writing process like then? Are you a serial plotter or are you a pantster?
I would say historically I've definitely been a pantster. And I'm doing now a book at the moment which it's my first attempt at extreme plotting, because I've got this theory that if I can plot enough, like there's a chart. I've gone landscape. Is
that by your left hand side now?
This is a poster. Okay. This is the film poster that fell off the wall earlier. It's a great film and it's loads of words. It's basically taught my son to read that. It's A New Leaf, the film. Anyway, I've got this theory that if it's going above my desk here, like behind my laptop, basically, and I've gone landscape because I think that what I'm thinking is if I can make enough of a plan that if I have a bad day writing, or sleepless night or whatever, for whatever reason it's just not happening, I can go to another part of the book and coherently do 500, 700, whatever words. I can just describe something somewhere else. It doesn't have to be the crux of the dialogue or whatever, but I could just open a chapter for myself for later, which should hopefully be a nice nugget to come across 3 weeks, 6 weeks time. But also what I'm terrible at is letting it snowball. So if I have one sleepless night and I don't write, I will then the next day, the problem is no longer the sleepless night. I might have slept really, really well, but then it's like, you've got to go and read back something that you wrote a couple of days ago. So it takes you longer to reorientate yourself. And I think the thing I really want to try with this book is to stay orientated within it without sort of untethering myself mentally from it for as long as possible. I've never managed to do that. I'm terrible at I come out of it and then I'll go and write, do a succession of 3,000 word days and then kind of I'm staggering out like I've come out of a cave again. And I feel like I'll be a different person if I can manage this.
I was going to say, if you had to estimate on energy bars, how long do you reckon it's going to take you?
Well, I've only got till the 31st of March with this book. Ooh. So yeah, it's going to be less, well, maybe not energy bars, but like a lot of coffee.
Yes. How many coffees does it take to write a book?
Yeah, I'd say I might go up to 3 a day too.
Well, that's an average day. Brilliant. We have got some questions coming in from the chat, so we'll get to that very shortly.
Okay.
Chris, do you want to any more questions before we get into those?
Yeah, got a few more questions, some staple ones that we have on the show, but I'm going to ask you a different one. So, your book is going to get to number 1 and it's going to be number one for 6 months. Okay.
Right.
However, on the condition that it does that, you have to perfect a dance with somebody who has been on Strictly. You have to do that dance. So my question is, what dance are you doing, and who is your dancing partner?
Okay. I'd want to do one of the ones where they come down off the ceiling. Just really be all in, like,
Suspended
how
in
is
the
this
air.
a challenge? I get to be a best-selling writer and do a dream Strictly dance. Yeah, I think I'd want to do, like, was she dressed as Mary Poppins? Judy Murray? Is that somebody from, is that someone from the States?
Yes, Halo says
Dancing with the Stars.
Oh, is that what it's called in America?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And they have some of the same judges as well.
Oh, really?
Bruno, I think, goes back and forth.
Very
I think
much
I
in
would
demand,
come
is
down.
Bruno.
Huh?
I said Bruno's very much in demand.
Yeah. Yes, I think I would come down off the ceiling in. I think it was in. What's it called? Blackpool, in the ballroom, and I think she was. She was dressed as Mary Poppins or something. But she was holding onto balloons, and I've always wanted to do one of those things in that harness, so I'd do that. And I think she was with Anton.
Oh, so you're going to be
Who's also a writer now.
Nice. Is he really?
Yeah, he has an amazing series of crime books.
Ooh, Chris.
Is he writing that, or is he a ghostwriter?
I genuinely am not sure. I don't know.
I'll interpret it the way that I think.
I really am not sure.
Fair enough, Chris.
If I had juice, I think I would have. I've told you enough about those Strictly books. I think I've blown my chances.
Right, we have to tag Strictly multiple times in the show promotion, so we can get Alexandra on the show. Chris, what I'm going to do is play the little video, and then you can ask our staple questions, and you guys in the audience start sending your questions in. I know a few have come in already. Thank you for those. But if you've got more, please send them in. Ross says, I listened to an interview with him the other day. I'm assuming he means Bruno.
Oh, yeah.
Or Anton. Could be Anton.
Anton, sorry.
Oh,
yeah.
Anton.
Or it could be Anton's ghostwriter. We don't know.
Well, that one. Okay, staple questions, Chris, because we're getting there. We're getting this. The show's flying by, and we're going to run out of time for the questions. I hate. This is a good thing, but it's also it stresses me out that we're not going to get them in.
Okay, so the first staple writing community chat show question is: if you could take any fictional character and make them your own, which character would it be and why?
I was really excited when I thought of the answer to this. I want Amy from Gone Girl to do some challenges, like maybe some long distance swims. I just like the idea of she's so privileged, and as far as I remember that book, part of her sort of devious awfulness is because she's had two parents who are writers. She's kind of the proto version of like of influencers' kids, that her whole childhood was made into books and stuff. And I like the idea of moving her out of that environment where it has no value and putting her into the side of a mountain or running a marathon or something like that. Partly just to sort of slightly punish her because she's obviously awful, but also because I think I'd be interested to see how she responded. But she'd have to continue to be written by Gillian Flynn in my book. I don't know how we'd work that. There would be some contractual discussions, but I don't want my crap version of the writing of Amy from Gone Girl. I want it to be actually brilliant Gillian Flynn.
It was amazing Amy, wasn't it? When she was a child, it was amazing. Maybe it could be Adrenaline Amy. When she gets the older
exactly.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Like good answer.
Okay. That's fantastic, yeah. If you could take an ending to anything, again, this is open to any kind of fiction, so in a book, a TV show, or a film, what ending are you going to take and change, and why?
I got really stuck with this because, do you know why? There's so few things that I really remember the ending to. And I think this is really important. I've had this conversation with writers. It's really important not to get stuck on like the last 2 pages. And I've also, like, I was a judge on the Costa Book Awards as well. And it's a really good nugget to hold on to for the sort of tone of voice thing as well. You don't usually remember the last 2 pages of a book unless it's like something like How to Kill Your Family, which is all set up for the, you know, the dominoes to fall in a certain way.
Big reveal, yeah.
You take away the feeling that it gave you when you were reading it. So I don't want to change the ending of anything. They can all be what they are because I've taken what I got from them usually by that point anyway. Sorry if that's a cop-out. I did really think about it.
And then the last of the staple questions before we get on to the community-based ones is a bit morbid, but you're on your deathbed. You're looking back at your writing career. What is success and what does it look like to you?
I think it's it's what I was saying before about when you write something that finds the right people. And I think it's obviously all writers want to make pots of money and have power and influence in their industry through sales. But actually, when you've spent so much time and you usually have like these sort of like little imaginary people that will read your book one day when you're writing. And when you get messages from people, like I had one yesterday from someone who'd said, oh, I did all day today. I painted all my banisters and I listened to the whole of your audiobook for Under the Same Stars. And it was so great because my dad died last year. And like, it's like, there's no marketing plan in the world that can go, we really want the banister people, you know, and but like when you feel like the person who needed the tone that you were writing in and the story that you were writing, and they got it for them. And I've had it as a reader so many times myself, when, you know, you're at an airport missing somebody and then someone can give you the gift of leaving your own head for a few hours. So that's definitely success. I mean, clearly I want to, you know, swagger around Harrogate with everyone buying me beer.
Yeah, definitely.
Fantastic. Brilliant. So we have got some fantastic questions in from the audience. Thank you guys for doing so. Let's get the first one in. Catherine, is it bittersweet to see your hard work put out under someone else's name and then see them get all the credit?
No, not really, because you've gone into the process knowing that will happen. And on the whole, I've never had a really horrible experience. I think it would be awful if you were doing like a kind of stereotypical neurotic diva who then went on kind of Jonathan Ross and talked about her writing process for 45 minutes. That would be kind of gutting. But on the whole, I find I'm always quite jealous of TV writers, and I find the collaborative process of like, no, but what about if this? Or how about, oh my God, I worked out how we can do it. I really love those sorts of conversations, and that I find that a really stimulating way to work. So on the whole, it doesn't upset me at all. And usually, you know, even the ones where I've signed a massive non-disclosure, they're usually quite gracious in the acknowledgements, and so I can go, well, you know, just check out these acknowledgements. I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to bring my NDA.
I could just imagine someone on Jonathan Ross now saying, "It took me 6 energy bars to get to the end of this book," and they didn't even write it.
Exactly. That's when you'll know it's Alexandra Heminsley book.
Okay, thank you for the questions. Ross, do you set boundaries to stop yourself from going off on a tangent? Do you have a technique for that, or do you run with it?
I'm quite bad as in good, as in I don't write thousands and thousands of words off on a tangent. What I'm terrible for is research tangents. I would happily, you know, be able to describe to you how to build the machine that molds plastic in a certain way to make a certain kind of toy because someone bought a toy at the beach in one passing scene. I mean, I can go back to Adam and Eve with that sort of thing. And sometimes I think you do kind of need it. And even if it doesn't come out, even if you're not describing the manufacture of the machine, blah, 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 if if it's your brain kind of having a rest from the writing bit. So I guess sometimes you need that a bit. But I'm not hugely guilty of overwriting off in tangents in that way, no. Yeah, and I think that's probably from coming up through journalism, where your deadline, your word counts were like 700, 1,500 words. So then suddenly when they say, oh, we just need 90,000 by summer, you're like,
yeah. I think if you've got deadlines like yourself, being like an overwriter in that respect would be more difficult to get it all back into line before the deadline, would it? Or is it quite a flexible thing? Or if you're quite efficient at making it less
some
wordy,
people like sense. they sort of deliberately overwrite. So some people, I think, I've definitely got a friend who will write 3,000 words to get 1,500, and he knows he's got to do that. You see what I mean? It's like, my mum with cooking, like, well, I mean, obviously I'm not just going to put one clove of garlic in. I think it's like the writing version of that. So if that's your process, then that's completely valid. So yeah.
Cool. One more tip from the audience as we are just popping over the time. I told you to go quick.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. Halo says pan-seared duck or balsamic glazed salmon.
Oh, duck, definitely. I'm not a fan of salmon. I don't know why. Duck 100%. When I first started writing, I worked for a cookery school because I couldn't spend too much time by myself and got really lonely and depressed. And so I was in charge of buying all the stock for a cookery school. And so duck always makes me feel slightly, it's not something I'd cook for myself at home. And so it always makes me think of like, you've got a lot of duck left after that lesson. I'll take some. Young writer me.
Yeah,
I'm glad you put that question up, Chris, because I just saw duck in the comments. Like, what is going on? Why is there so much duck in the comments?
You would have also seen the mutilation, not mutilation, the I can't even say it. The
evolution.
Thank you. Get that out. The evolution.
The only reason I know that word is because my son's so into Pokemon at the moment, so I know what everything evolves into.
Yeah, I kind of lost it now. But people started saying about a hybrid of both of those things, and ended up with a Sal Duckin.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Like
so,
when you do turducken at Thanksgiving. Yeah.
Bit strange.
Not with salmon. Don't bring salmon into the poultry.
Never ever salmon. Okay, so one more question. In fact, two more questions for me, and we can finish this up. One is, as you've been a judge on an award panel multiple times for writing, what one piece of advice would you give any writer at kind of any stage for someone who's entering writing competitions?
I would say that you just have to do the thing that you want to do, because I have sat on a creative writing competition panel and seen people genuinely fall out. And so there is no, this will please judges opinion. Like people are people, and there is not going to be one received good writing. That even in a creative writing competition where the judges had all been selected by one board, there was still such a breadth of opinion about what was good or what was bad, and what was good writing and bad writing, exciting, not exciting. So you're not going to be able to win. Like, it's not like there's not an algorithm. Humans are too fundamentally unreliable for you to try and kind of game it that way. So you just have to just do the writing that you want to do, because what one's imagined literati is just a bunch of bickering people.
They're all there for the biscuits and
yeah for sure.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I think it's brilliant. Really easy to think of it as one sort of homogenous blob where everyone just goes, yeah, all at the same time and agrees. And I was quite taken aback by how happy people were to really argue about the difference of opinion.
I mean, if you keep bringing biscuits into a room, people argue forever. That's my experience.
But yeah, if they'd had more of your beer, then it would all have gone a bit more well.
That would be amazing to watch. Imagine just putting a shed load of beer in with some judges and going, here's all the finalists.
That's what Harrogate is. We've come back to where we started.
Although I'd love to find a little round table and then to put a bunch of authors to just talk writing with a load of beer, because that would, about 2 hours in, would be brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, Alexandra, thank you so much. But one final question before we do wrap up. Where can people find out more information about yourself, and where can they find your books?
The place where I am most sort of active, I suppose, is Instagram, where I'm just alexandra.heminsley. I do have a website, but I'm very bad at sort of updating it. And Under the Same Stars is out in paperback this month with a sort of wintry
cover. I've got a different colour.
Yeah, that. This is only just come out this last Thursday.
Which do you like more?
I much prefer this. I just think it suits the stars. I mean, there are North Norway skies that get that pink, but I find this in January very. And my new book, The Queue, is out in August. So,
amazing.
Yeah.
You can indeed find the links to your website in the description of this video, guys, and the podcast. So if you're listening back, check it out. Or if you're watching, you can go and click on that. But thank you so much, Alexandra. It's been absolutely wonderful to have you on the show. And as I mentioned at the start, we're only touching the iceberg of what you've done in your career. So it's fantastic. And thank you so much. And we've loved chatting with you.
Thank you for having me.
Superb interview, Halo says, minus the salmon haters.
It's not hate.
Great show. Thank you for your comments, guys, in the chat. Wonderful for you to be here and chatting with us. Really appreciate that. So please do support and tag Strictly Come Dancing on Twitter and all those things for Alexandra, because she wants to get on the show. Let's make that happen.
My dancing dream.
Yeah, brilliant. Chris, anything else from you?
No, I mean, I just hope it happens. 2024, if we turn on Strictly next year and Alexandra's there, then we've done our job. So I'll be happy.
And they'll do that thing in the first week where you have to do a dance that represents your job, and I'll just be like in a massive book costume with my arms and legs sticking out.
Sounds fantastic, with loads of energy bars attached to the side of the book. Guys, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. We'll see you in the week. Thank you. Stay safe. Bye-bye.